Hi guys. So today we're going to talk about finding area and perimeter of both a triangle and a trapezoid. So to begin with, let's take a closer look at the triangle. So when we're talking about the triangle, we have what's called obviously the base, which is at the bottom. But then we have this height. Now, remember, we don't measure height as being slanted. It's always going to be perpendicular to some base. And so in this case, the height is what we're going to call the altitude. Now remember, the altitude starts at the vertex and then goes perpendicular to the opposite side. Perpendicular meaning it makes 90 degrees, in this case with the base. So the height of a triangle is just the distance or the length of an altitude. So in other words, the height is the altitude. And for a trapezoid, we have to remember there's two parts of a trapezoid that are going to be almost labeled the same. We have two bases. We'll just call it base 1 and base 2. And the height of a trapezoid, just how when we talked about the height of a parallelogram, we don't measure it as a diagonal. It's always going to be perpendicular distance from one base to the other. And so here, the height is going to be the distance between one base to the other. Now, let's take a closer look at a triangle, because for a triangle, the altitude can be inside the triangle, or the height can be inside a triangle. The height can be outside of a triangle, or it can also be the side of a triangle. But nonetheless, it's always going to be perpendicular to one side. So let's talk about finding area of a triangle. The area of a triangle is simply going to be the base of the triangle times the height of the triangle divided by 2. So I'm going to write it two ways for you, but please understand that mathematically it means the same thing. Sometimes you might see it as 1/2 base times height, or sometimes you may also see it as the base times the height divided by 2. Please understand that both of these is exactly the same thing. So here we have a problem that's asking us to find both the perimeter and the area. So we're going to start off by writing down the area formula for a triangle, which was base times height divided by 2. So we're looking for two things in order for us to find the area. One, the base, which we know it's down here as 20, and the height, which is 7.4. So really, the only thing we got to do to find the area is substitute in the base and the height. So base was 20, the height was 7.4, and we're going to divide both of those two things by 2. And so when we put it in the calculator, we get a total area of 74, and we can't forget about our units. Our units here is kilometers. Now, because we're talking about area, it's going to be kilometers squared. And so that's for area. To find perimeter, remember perimeter, we just got to add up all the sides. So to find perimeter, all we're going to do is add up 11, 14, and 20. And that's going to give us our perimeter. So 11 plus 4, plus 14 plus 20 gives us a total perimeter of 45 kilometers. Now here, we're not going to put kilometers squared because it's just perimeter. Now let's look at another example. This one's asking us just for the area, but if you notice, the triangle is a little offset a little bit. But remember, we're going vertex perpendicular to the side. So here, even though it's slanted, our 16, that represents the height. Our base, however, it's not these two together, it's only the 22. It's only the base of the actual triangle, not what we extended it to be. So here, my height is 16, the base is 22. And so once again, finding the area formula is just base times height divided by 2. And so when we substitute it in, the base was 22, the height was 16, divide both of those by 2, and we get an area to be of 176 feet squared. So far, we've talked about finding the area of a triangle as just base times height divided by 2, or 1/2 base times height. Doesn't matter how you write it, same thing. Let's talk about finding area of a trapezoid. So remember, for a trapezoid, we have two bases, base 1 and base 2. And then the height is going to be perpendicular from one base to the other. And so area of a trapezoid, we're going to write it a couple of different ways. Now, please keep in mind, they all mean the same thing, just how when we talked about area of a triangle, we could have written it as base times height divided by 2, or 1/2 base times height. So for a trapezoid, we can do the same thing. Area of a trapezoid, we can write it as 1/2 height times base 1 plus base 2. Notice the parentheses. Parentheses, if you follow your order of operation, you're supposed to do parentheses first. Another way we could write it, and it's the same thing, it's just moving some things around. And some people may like it better this way, some don't. You pick and choose. We could also write it as base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2 times the height. Once again, you choose what you want. So let's look at an example. So for this problem, they're asking us to find the area of a trapezoid. So once again, we're going to start by labeling our diagram. Up here, we have our base 1, down here, base 2, and then we have our height. So really, the only thing that's left to do is plug it into our formula. Remember, the formula is base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2 times the height. And so all I'm going to do is go in and replace everything that I know. I know base 1 is 6. I know base 2 is 10. Divide that by 2. And I'm going to multiply all of this by the height, which is 6. And so, quick mental math, 6 plus 10 is 16. Half of that is 8. And 8 times 6 gives me an area of 48 centimeters squared. So let's move on to another example where we're doing two things. One, finding the area. Two, finding the perimeter. So the first thing I'm going to do is identify my bases and the height, because that's what I'm going to need for the area. So up here, we have base 1, down here, base 2, and here we have the height. We know this is the height because once again, it is perpendicular from one base to the other. It is not the slanted. Okay, so I have my basis, I have my height. All I gotta do now is plug it in to my formula. Remember, formula is base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2 times the height. And substitute in everything that we know. We know base 1 is 19, base 2 is 27. Divide that by 2, multiply by 16. Just how we did on the other one, we can take it one step at a time and simplify, and we get a total of 368 centimeters squared. Now, to find the perimeter, remember, for finding perimeter, all we got to do is add up all the sides. So here, my side is, I have a side of 16.5, 19, 21, and 27. So to find the perimeter, all I'm going to do is add up all of those sides. 16.5 plus 19 plus 21 plus 27, and we get a perimeter of 83.5 centimeters. 83.5 centimeters.